Messmer the Impaler committed the single greatest genocide in Elden Ring's history, and his own mother made sure you'd never know he existed. Think about that for a second. In a game filled with demigods who shattered the world, who corrupted themselves with outer gods, who literally tried to burn down reality itself, there's one whose crimes were so unspeakable, whose very existence was so dangerous that the Golden Order pretended he never existed at all. You won't find his name in any item description in the base game. Not one. You won't see his face in any painting, his statue in any cathedral, his symbol on any banner. While Godwyn gets tombs and Radagon gets festivals and even the cursed twins, Melina and Miquella get whispered legends, Messmer gets nothing. A complete erasure. A deletion from history so thorough that even his own siblings don't know he exists. And then you find the Shadow Realm. The first thing that hits you isn't the size of it, though this hidden realm is massive, an entire continent wiped from every map. It's not even the darkness that seems to seep from the very ground, or the way grace itself feels. Different here. Wrong somehow. No, the first thing that hits you is the bodies. Impaled corpses stretch for miles. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They line every road like grotesque signposts, their charred remains still somehow writhing after centuries, kept in a state between life and death by flames that burn but never consume. This isn't war. This isn't conquest. This is extermination. And at the center of it all, in a fortress that makes Lanedale look like a country estate, sits a prince with red hair and golden eyes, still waiting for his mother to call him home, still believing, after all this time, that he's the good son, the loyal son, the beloved son. He's right about that last part. Because here's the twisted truth that transforms everything you thought you knew about Elden Ring's story. Messmer wasn't cast out because Marika hated him. He was erased because she loved him most of all. And that love, that desperate, guilty, all-consuming maternal love, might be the real reason the Golden Order fell. Every impaled body, every burned village, every child soldier in black armor, it was all done in her name, for her glory. To make her proud. Messmer turned himself into history's greatest monster because he thought that's what his mother wanted. And the truly sick part? Maybe it was. Welcome to the real story of Elden Ring. The one where the greater will isn't the true villain, where Marika's schemes run deeper than anyone imagined, where the greatest tragedy isn't what happened to Godwyn or Melina or Miquella. It's what happened to the son whose only crime was being born with a serpent in his soul and a mother who couldn't bear to watch him suffer. This is a story of love turned to abandonment, loyalty turned to madness, and a genocide so complete that its victims don't even exist in history books. This is the story of Messmer, the Impaler, and it's going to change everything you thought you knew about the lands between. Because once you understand what really happened in the Shadow Realm, once you see what Marika was truly capable of, what she asked her favorite child to do and then abandoned him for doing, you'll never look at that golden tree the same way again. Part 1. The Hidden Prince. The Genealogical Cover-Up. Let's start with the most damning evidence of all. Messmer doesn't exist. Not in the way that matters in Elden Ring. Not in the genealogies, not in the histories, not in the legends. Every other demigod, even the ones who died, even the ones who went mad, even the ones who literally tried to destroy the world, they all get mentioned. Godwyn the Golden, first to fall. Radagon, strongest of the demigods. Ricard, who fed himself to a serpent. Morgott and Morg, the cursed twins hidden beneath the capital. Melina and Miquella, the prodigies born afflicted. Ranni, who orchestrated the Night of Black Knives. But Messmer? Nothing. Not a single mention. Not one item description. Not one piece of dialogue. Not even a hint that he ever existed. This isn't an oversight. This isn't From Software forgetting to add lore. This is deliberate. This is systematic. This is what the Romans called damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory itself. When someone committed crimes so heinous, when their very existence threatened the stability of the state, they weren't just killed. They were erased. Their statues were torn down, their faces chiseled off reliefs, their names struck from records. It was as if they had never been born at all. But here's where it gets interesting. Damnatio memoriae was usually reserved for traitors, for usurpers, for enemies of the state. Messmer was none of these things. Every piece of evidence we find in the Shadow Realm points to one undeniable fact. He was pathologically loyal to Marika. So loyal that he committed genocide in her name. So loyal that when she abandoned him, he still sits on his throne waiting for her to call him back. So why erase him? The answer is in what he represents. Not rebellion, but the opposite. Absolute obedience taken to its logical, horrifying conclusion. Messmer is what happens when divine authority demands absolute submission. He's the perfect soldier who followed orders so well that his very existence proves those orders were evil. Look at how thorough the erasure is. In the base game, we find paintings of Radagon, statues of Marika, murals depicting the demigods. But search every castle, every catacomb, every hidden room. You won't find a single image of a red-haired prince with serpentine features. Even in places where he should logically appear, he's been literally carved out of existence. The walking mausoleums provide our biggest clue. These massive structures house the bodies of Marika's unwanted children, demigods who died without achieving godhood, whose souls wander seeking purpose. There are 7 mausoleums in the base game, 7 dead children of Marika that she felt guilty enough about to give them these elaborate tombs. But count the known demigods who died, Godwin. That's it, just Godwin. And he has his own elaborate tomb system beneath Lendel. So who are the other 6 mausoleums for? The disturbing implication is that Marika had many more children than we know about. Children who, like Messmer, were erased from history. But unlike Messmer, they were probably erased for being too weak, too cursed, too imperfect for the Golden Order's image. Messmer's erasure is different. He wasn't erased for being weak. He was erased for being too strong, too effective, too good at what Marika asked him to do. Timeline placement. Understanding when Messmer was born is crucial to understanding why he was erased, and the evidence points to something shocking. Messmer might be Marika's oldest child. Older than Godwin, older than all of them. Consider the architectural evidence in the Shadow Realm. The structures there use design elements that predate the Golden Order's establishment. The Fire Knight armor descriptions reference ancient vows made before the Erdtree's full flowering. Messmer's own fighting style incorporates fundamentalist incantations that weren't developed until Radagon's era, but also pre-Erdtree fire sorceries that were banned after the Golden Order's rise. He's a chronological impossibility unless he was born during the transition period when Marika was overthrowing the previous order but hadn't fully established her own. This would make him not just her oldest child, but her first attempt at creating divine offspring. And what a failed attempt he was. The Base Serpent within him isn't just some random curse. It's described as something primordial, something that predates the Erdtree, something inherently opposed to the Golden Order's very existence. If Messmer was born before Marika fully purged the old powers, before she established the rigid rules of the Golden Order, then his curse makes sense. He's contaminated with the very forces she was trying to destroy. This explains why younger demigods don't know him. By the time Godwin was born, Messmer was already in the Shadow Realm. By the time Radagon and Ranni came along, he was already erased. The twins, Miquella and Melina, might have heard whispers, but even they seem unaware of their older brother's existence. The older brother, Dynamic, becomes heartbreaking when you analyze his dialogue. He doesn't speak like a younger sibling jealous of his betters. He speaks like someone who remembers when there were no others, when he was the only one, when his mother's love wasn't divided among a dozen children but focused entirely on him. O mother, would you truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light? This isn't the plea of a forgotten child. This is the confusion of a firstborn son who can't understand why he's no longer worthy of inheritance. He remembers a time when he was the heir apparent, when lordship wasn't a question but a certainty. Pre-Golden Order birth theory. The evidence for Messmer's pre-Golden Order birth goes deeper than architecture and armor. It's in his very nature, his fundamental being. Fire. Not the refined flame of the giants that Marika would later steal and seal. Not the black flame of the Gloam-Eyed queen that she would defeat, but pure primordial fire that exists outside the Golden Order's cosmology entirely. Fire that burns spirits themselves, that consumes even the undead, that leaves nothing but ash and memory. This is the fire of the previous age. The age of the Crucible, when all life was mixed together in chaotic abundance. The age before the Erdtree imposed its rigid order on the world. Messmer isn't just using this fire. He is this fire. It's part of his essential nature, woven into his very soul by the Base Serpent that inhabits him. The serpent imagery is crucial here. In Elden Ring's mythology, serpents are consistently portrayed as enemies of the Erdtree. They're associated with immortality outside the Golden Order system, with powers that predate and oppose Marika's rule. The god-devouring serpent that Rykard fed himself to, the serpentine features of the Crucible Knights, the snake-like appearance of those who delve too deep into primordial magic. But Messmer's serpent is different. It's not something he sought out or summoned or bargained with. It was born inside him, part of him from the very beginning. This suggests he was conceived when those old powers still held sway, when the boundaries between order and chaos were still fluid. Consider Marika's reaction to his birth. She doesn't kill him, though a serpent-cursed child should be anathema to everything she's building. She doesn't abandon him immediately. Instead, she tries to fix him. The false eye of grace she places in his socket, the seal she puts on the serpent. These aren't the actions of a mother dealing with a cursed child. They're the actions of a goddess trying to retrofit an older model to work with a new system. It's like she had him with the previous operating system, and now she's trying to install patches and updates to make him compatible with the Golden Order. But some corruptions run too deep. Some incompatibilities can't be resolved. The Base Serpent isn't just in Messmer. It is Messmer, as fundamental to his existence as the grace in Marika's eyes. Part 2. The Curse of the Base Serpent, the Abyssal Serpent. Within. To understand Messmer's tragedy, you have to understand what's living inside him. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally, physically writhing inside his flesh and soul. An entity so fundamentally wrong that its very existence threatens the fabric of the Golden Order. The Base Serpent isn't an outer god. This is crucial. Outer gods are external forces trying to influence the lands between. The frenzied flame, the formless mother, the god of rot. They're invasive, foreign, alien. The Base Serpent is none of these things. It's native, indigenous. It was here first. Think about what base means in this context. Not base as in lowly or crude, base as in baseline, foundation, the thing everything else is built on. The Base Serpent is what existed before the Erdtree imposed its order, before the greater will made contact, before Marika became a god. It's the primordial chaos that she spent her entire reign trying to suppress. And it's inside her son. The body horror of Messmer's existence cannot be overstated. This isn't like Melina's rot or Miquella's eternal youth curses that affect them but remain separate from their core identity. The Base Serpent is Messmer's core identity. Every flame he conjures comes from it. Every thought is influenced by it. Every moment of his existence is a battle between his human will and the serpent's primordial nature. Watch his animations carefully. Even in his first phase, when he's maintaining his princely composure, you can see it. The way his body sometimes moves wrong, joints bending in ways that suggest something else is pulling the strings from inside. The way his fire doesn't behave like normal fire, writhing and coiling like living things. The way his spear techniques incorporate movements that no human martial art would teach because they're not human movements at all. The serpent speaks to him. We know this from item descriptions and environmental storytelling. It whispers of times before the Erdtree, of powers that make godhood look like a child's game, of freedoms that the Golden Order cannot comprehend. Every day, every hour, every second, Messmer has to choose between listening to that voice and remaining loyal to his mother. And for centuries, maybe millennia, he chooses his mother. Every single time. The psychological torture of this existence is beyond comprehension. Imagine having intrusive thoughts that aren't just thoughts but an actual entity trying to claw its way out of your body. Imagine those thoughts being older than civilization, more powerful than gods, and absolutely correct about the hypocrisy of the order you serve. Because here's the thing the Base Serpent knows that Messmer tries to ignore. Marika built her Golden Order on a foundation of lies. She suppressed the Crucible, denied the primordial truths, and created a rigid hierarchy that goes against the fundamental chaos of existence. The serpent isn't evil, it's honest. And that honesty is what makes it so dangerous. Look at what happens when Messmer finally embraces it in his second phase. The mask doesn't just fall off, it shatters, revealing that his entire face has become serpentine. His body elongates, distorts, transcends human limitation. The flames stop pretending to be mere fire and reveal themselves as living serpents, each one a fragment of the greater whole. This isn't corruption. This is revelation. This is Messmer finally stopping the lie he's been telling himself for eons, that he can be his mother's perfect son while carrying the antithesis of everything she represents. Marika's desperate seal. The false eye is perhaps the most disturbing symbol in all of Elden Ring, and that's saying something in a game filled with grafted limbs and living jars made from corpses. Marika literally plucked out her son's eye and replaced it with grace itself. Not a blessing of grace, not an enchantment. She took the fundamental force that defines her godhood and shoved it into his eye socket like a cork in a bottle. The item description makes it clear. This was meant to seal the Base Serpent, to keep it from fully manifesting. But think about what this means. Marika, at the height of her power, with all the resources of godhood at her disposal, could only manage a seal, not a cure, not a purification, just a temporary measure to keep the serpent contained. This tells us something crucial about the Base Serpent's power. It rivals or exceeds that of the Golden Order itself. The seal causes Messmer constant, excruciating pain. Every moment of his existence is agony as grace, which should be a blessing burns against his fundamental nature. It's like being allergic to your own blood, like having your immune system constantly attacking your vital organs. But he endures it. For her. Always for her. The visual symbolism is perfect. The eye of grace lets him see the world as Marika wants it to be seen. Ordered, hierarchical, golden. But his natural eye, the one that remains, sees the truth. The contradiction between these two visions drives him slowly insane. He can literally see both the lie and the truth simultaneously, and he has to choose the lie every single time to remain loyal to his mother. As the seal weakens over time and it is weakening, we can see the cracks spreading. Messmer has to actively reinforce it through will alone. Every time he uses his fire, every time he channels his power, he risks breaking the seal entirely. His entire fighting style in the first phase is built around restraint, control, keeping the serpent locked away. The parallel to Marika sealing destined death is intentional and tragic. Both mother and son are defined by what they've sealed away, death in her case, primordial chaos in his. Both seals are failing. Both will ultimately result in the destruction of everything they tried to protect. But there's a key difference. Marika sealed destined death to protect her Golden Order. She sealed the Base Serpent to protect Messmer himself, because she knew what we learned, that embracing the serpent means losing himself entirely to something older and more terrible than any outer god. Visual manifestations. The aesthetics of Messmer's curse deserve deep analysis, because From Software doesn't do anything by accident, especially not with their most important DLC boss. First, the Flame Serpents. These aren't metaphorical or magical constructs. They're physical manifestations of the Base Serpent trying to escape. Every time Messmer uses his fire, parts of the serpent leak out into reality. Watch how they move. They don't behave like projections or spells. They ride with independent thought, seeking targets Messmer didn't designate, lingering after they should dissipate. The transformation in Phase 2 is body horror at its finest. This isn't a power-up or a desperate gambit. It's Messmer finally stopping his lifelong fight against his own nature. The way his body stretches and contorts, the way his spine extends beyond human proportion, the way his mouth opens wide enough to swallow a person whole. This isn't transformation. It's revelation. This is what he always was beneath the armor and false grace. The red lightning versus golden lightning dichotomy is crucial. Golden lightning belongs to the ancient dragons, beings who existed in harmony with the greater will before Marika's ascension. It represents divine authority, legitimate power, order. Red lightning belongs to something else entirely. It's not corrupted golden lightning. It's an entirely different force that predates and opposes the golden variety. When Messmer combines red lightning with serpentine fire, he's not mixing two powers. He's revealing that they were always the same thing, expressions of the primordial chaos that the Golden Order tried to suppress. The visual effect is deliberate. It looks wrong. It looks like reality is glitching, like two incompatible files trying to run simultaneously. Because that's exactly what's happening. Messmer is a walking paradox, a divine prince carrying the antithesis of divinity. The fire that burns spirits themselves is perhaps the most terrifying aspect. In Elden Ring's cosmology, spirits should be eternal, recycled through the Erdtree, returned to the greater will. But Messmer's flames consume them entirely, removing them from the cycle, denying them even the afterlife. This isn't just death, it's complete cessation of existence. And he uses it casually, without hesitation, because to him it's as natural as breathing. Part 3. The mother's favorite. Son. Evidence of favoritism. The tragedy of Messmer becomes infinitely worse when you realize he wasn't cast out because Marika hated him. He was her favorite. Her most beloved child. The one she trusted with everything that mattered. The evidence is overwhelming once you know where to look. Start with the scope of what she gave him. Not a castle, not a province, an entire realm. The land of Shadow is massive, possibly as large as the lands between itself, and she made him its sole ruler. No other demigod received anything close to this level of authority. Then there's the mission itself. Marika didn't send some general or knight to purge the Hornsent. She sent her son, her beloved son. This wasn't a punishment or an exile, it was the ultimate expression of trust. She was asking him to commit genocide in her name, to stain his soul so hers could remain pure, to become a monster so she could remain a god. Oh mother, would you truly lordship sanction? This line destroys me every time because of what it implies. Even after everything, even after being abandoned for countless years, Messmer still thinks he might become Elden Lord. Why? Because his mother told him he would. Because before the twins, before Godwyn, before all the others, Messmer was the heir apparent. The blessing items Marika gave him are heartbreaking in their intimacy. The seal of grace wasn't just functional. It was crafted by her own hands, infused with her own power, a piece of herself literally embedded in his flesh. No other demigod received such a personal gift. Even Melina's prosthetics and Miquella's needles were crafted by smiths and sages, not by Marika herself. Look at how his knights speak of him. They don't describe a tyrant or a monster. They describe someone who was once noble, kind, worthy of absolute devotion. This wasn't always the bitter creature we fight. This was once a prince so charismatic, so genuinely good, that hardened knights chose eternal exile rather than abandon him. The tragic love. The relationship between Marika and Messmer is the dark heart of Elden Ring's entire narrative. Because this isn't a story of neglect or abuse in the traditional sense. This is a story of love so overwhelming it becomes destructive. Marika loved Messmer too much to kill him when she discovered his curse. Think about that. The woman who would later shatter the Elden Ring itself, who would sacrifice Godwyn to her schemes, who would abandon Mohg and Morgott for their curses. She couldn't bring herself to harm Messmer. Instead, she tried everything to fix him. The guilt must have been unbearable. Every mother believes their child is perfect, but Marika was a god. Her children should have been literally perfect. And here was Messmer, her firstborn, carrying a curse that represented everything she stood against. The Base Serpent wasn't just an embarrassment, it was proof that even godhood couldn't guarantee perfection. So she did what she thought was kindness. She gave him purpose. She gave him a realm to rule. She gave him a crusade to lead. "Go forth," she essentially said, "and make me proud. Prove that you're more than your curse. Become the hero I know you can be." But she was asking him to become a monster. The promise to return is the cruelest part. We know from multiple sources that Marika promised to call Messmer home once his task was complete. But the task could never be complete. There would always be more enemies, more dissidents, more threats to the Golden Order. She gave him an impossible mission because she couldn't bear to tell him the truth, that he could never come home. The Shadow Realm wasn't a kingdom. It was a prison with gold bars and silk sheets. It was a place where Messmer could play at being a prince while being safely contained, where his curse couldn't contaminate the Golden Order, where his existence couldn't raise uncomfortable questions about Marika's perfection. And the sickest part, Messmer knew. Deep down, some part of him must have known, but he chose to believe the lie because the alternative, that his mother's love was conditional, that he was fundamentally unworthy, was too painful to accept. Messmer's undying loyalty. Despite everything, the abandonment, the impossible mission, the centuries of silence. Messmer never betrays Marika. Never. Not once. During the shattering, when all other demigods turned on each other, Messmer stayed loyal. When the Elden Ring was broken and chaos reigned, he maintained order in the Shadow Realm. When it became clear Marika had abandoned him, he continued his crusade. Why? Because that's what Mother wanted. This loyalty goes beyond duty or programming. This is the loyalty of a child, desperate for approval that will never come. Every impaled body, every burned village, every atrocity is a love letter written in blood and ash. Look, Mother, look what I've done for you. Is it enough? Am I enough now? The throne room tells the whole story. Messmer doesn't sit on some makeshift seat in a military camp. He has a proper throne room, decorated and maintained, waiting for the day Marika summons him to court. He holds audiences with no one. He maintains ceremony and protocol for a kingdom that doesn't officially exist. He's playing house in hell, pretending everything is normal, that any day now his mother will call him home. His knights break my heart because they see it. They know their lord is slowly going insane from isolation and abandonment. But they also remember the prince he used to be. Noble, kind, worthy of their devotion. So they maintain the fiction. They address him with full titles. They follow protocols. They help him pretend, because what else can they do? When you really analyze it, Messmer might be the only demigod who never betrayed Marika in any way. Godwyn got himself killed. Radagon went mad. Ranni orchestrated the Night of Black Knives. Rikard fed himself to a serpent. Mohg fell to an outer god. Morgott failed to maintain order. Melina and Miquella pursued their own agendas. But Messmer? Messmer did exactly what his mother asked, became exactly what she needed him to become, and asked for nothing in return except love that would never come. Part 4. The Crusade. Elden Ring's Darkest. Chapter The Hornsent Genocide. We need to talk about what Messmer actually did in the Shadow Realm, not in abstract terms, not in lore implications. The actual physical, horrifying reality of the Crusade. The scorched ruins stretch for miles. Not metaphorically, literally miles of burned-out buildings, melted stone, ash-covered fields where nothing will ever grow again. This wasn't war. War implies two sides fighting. This was systematic extermination. The furnace golems are perhaps the most disturbing evidence. These massive constructs weren't just weapons. They were mobile crematories. The Hornsent weren't just killed, they were stuffed inside these walking furnaces, burned alive, their screams muffled by metal and flame. And here's the truly sick part. The golems are still active, still walking. The Hornsent inside are still burning, kept in a state of eternal immolation by Messmer's flames that burn but never fully consume. Every impaled body tells a story. Look at their positions, their clothing, their locations. These weren't soldiers. Most of them weren't even adults. The small skeletons, the tiny clothes, the toys scattered around certain poles. Messmer's crusade didn't discriminate by age. If you had horns, you died. If you were associated with the Hornsent, you died. If you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, you died. The cleansing fire deserves special attention because it doesn't work like normal fire. It burns souls themselves, preventing even the possibility of resurrection or afterlife. In a world where death isn't necessarily permanent, where spirits can linger and souls can be recycled, Messmer found a way to make death absolute. The Hornsent weren't just killed, they were erased from existence itself. The child soldiers are what really drives home the horror. The Black Knights who serve Messmer aren't grizzled veterans. Item descriptions and environmental storytelling make it clear many of them were recruited young. Children trained to kill other children. The Shadow Realm became a factory for producing killers, taking innocence and forging it into weapons. But why the Hornsent specifically? What made them such a threat that Marika ordered their complete extinction? The answer lies in what they represented. The Hornsent were the previous order, the rulers before Marika's ascension. They weren't just political rivals. They were living reminders that the Golden Order wasn't eternal, wasn't inevitable, wasn't the natural state of the world. Their very existence challenged Marika's narrative of divine right. More than that, the Hornsent knew Marika's origins. They knew she wasn't always a god. They knew how she ascended, what she sacrificed, who she betrayed. They were witnesses to crimes that, if revealed, would shatter the Golden Order's legitimacy. So they had to go, all of them. Every man, woman, and child who might carry those memories. The Jar Saint atrocities revealed the depths of depravity. The Hornsent practiced ritual jar, creation amalgamating beings into composite entities. Messmer didn't just stop this practice, he turned it against them. The jars in the Shadow Realm aren't filled with volunteers or criminals. They're filled with Hornsent civilians, forcibly merged, kept conscious and suffering for eternity. This is where Messmer crosses from soldier to sadist. It wasn't enough to kill them. He had to make them suffer in ways that mocked their own culture, that turned their sacred practices into instruments of torture. The cruelty is deliberate, systematic, designed to break not just bodies but spirits, cultures, entire ways of being. Military genius. But here's the disturbing truth. Messmer wasn't just a butcher. He was possibly the greatest military commander in Elden Ring's history. Greater than Radagon, greater than Godwyn, maybe even greater than Godfrey himself. The scope of his victory is staggering. The Hornsent weren't primitives, they were the previous dominant civilization, with magic and technology that rivaled the Golden Order. They had defensive advantages, knowledge of the terrain, the desperation of those fighting for survival. and Messmer crushed them so completely that their entire civilization ceased to exist. His tactics were brilliant in their horrific efficiency. The impalement wasn't just cruelty, it was psychological warfare. Each pole was placed specifically to be visible from strategic locations. Trade routes, water sources, gathering places. Anywhere survivors might go, they'd find the bodies of their loved ones. It broke their will before battles even began. The Fire Knights under his command weren't just soldiers, they were a perfectly coordinated force that operated with surgical precision. No wasted movements, no excessive destruction beyond what was ordered. When Messmer wanted a village burned, only that village burned. When he wanted a specific bloodline ended, only that bloodline died. This wasn't chaotic slaughter. It was organized, systematic, controlled. His use of flame as both weapon and tool of area denial was revolutionary. The ever-burning fires didn't just kill, they made entire regions uninhabitable. Survivors couldn't return to their homes, couldn't bury their dead, couldn't even gather resources. They were forced to flee to where Messmer wanted them, channeled into kill zones where his forces waited. The military innovation extends to his personal combat style. Messmer developed techniques that combined fundamentalist incantations with primordial fire sorcery, two schools of magic that shouldn't be compatible. He created a martial art that incorporated the Base Serpent's movements while maintaining knightly discipline. Every aspect of his warfare was a hybrid of order and chaos, perfectly balanced to cause maximum destruction. Even Radagon, for all his strength and tactical prowess, never achieved what Messmer did. Radagon held back stars and commanded loyalty through strength. Messmer erased civilizations and commanded loyalty through a combination of charisma, fear, and tactical brilliance that has no equal in the lands between. The moral event horizon. The question that haunts the Shadow Realm, did Messmer enjoy it? The answer changes everything about how we interpret his character. If he hated every moment, if each death was agony for him, then he's a tragic figure, a good man forced to become a monster. But if he enjoyed it, if he took pleasure in the slaughter, then he's something far worse, a sadist given divine sanction to indulge his darkest impulses. The evidence points to something more complex and disturbing. Both were true at different times. Early in the Crusade, we see evidence of restraint. The older battlefields show clean kills, military targets, minimal civilian casualties. The impalement seems almost respectful, bodies arranged with dignity, facing their homeland, given the honor of a visible death. This was Messmer the soldier, following orders he didn't enjoy but understood as necessary. But something changed. The later atrocities show a different hand. The arrangements become artistic, creative, designed to cause maximum psychological trauma. The burns become more elaborate, creating patterns and symbols visible only from above, performances for an audience of one who would never see them. This is Messmer, the artist of suffering, finding beauty in brutality. The corruption of his knights follows the same pattern. The Fire Knights were once noble warriors, honorable and disciplined. Their early equipment shows standard military gear, practical and efficient. But their later armor becomes more elaborate, more ceremonial, decorated with trophies and symbols of their kills. They stopped being soldiers and became believers in the Crusade itself. The line, "Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame," starts as a military order and becomes a religious mantra. The knights stop seeing Hornsent as enemies to be defeated and start seeing them as impurities to be cleansed. The language shifts from conquest to purification, from war to holy crusade. And Messmer led this transformation. Whether consciously or not, he turned his mother's political genocide into a religious experience. He made his knights love the killing by framing it as divine work. He transformed atrocity into art, murder into meaning. The parallel to real historical genocides is uncomfortable but intentional. The banality of evil, the gradual normalization of atrocity, the way ordinary people become monsters through incremental steps. It's all there in the Shadow Realm. Messmer didn't wake up one day deciding to impale children. He arrived there through 1,000 small compromises, each one seeming reasonable at the time. Part 5. The Fire Knights. Love in Hell. Messmer's found family. In the midst of hell, something beautiful and terrible bloomed, genuine love between Messmer and his Fire Knights. These weren't conscripts or mercenaries. Every Fire Knight chose to follow Messmer, and more importantly, chose to stay with him after the Crusade ended. When Marika abandoned him, when the Shadow Realm became a prison, when it became clear they would never go home, the Fire Knights remained. Individual stories emerged from item descriptions and environmental storytelling. Commander Salza, who gave up lands and title to follow Messmer into exile. Hilda, whose loyalty transcended death itself, rising as a spirit to continue serving. Queen, whose prayers for Messmer's well-being continued even as his lord descended into madness. These weren't relationships of fear or obligation. The Fire Knights genuinely loved their commander, and that love is perhaps the most tragic element of the entire story, because it means Messmer wasn't always the bitter, paranoid creature we fight. He was once someone worthy of such devotion. The romantic implications with certain knights add another layer of complexity. The intimate language in some item descriptions, the personal quarters within the Shadow Keep, the paired fighting styles that suggest deep familiarity. There were loves here. Real, meaningful relationships that provided moments of humanity in an inhuman situation. They created beauty together, not despite the horror, but because of it. Songs composed on campaign, depicting battles as epic poetry. Artworks painted in enemy blood, finding aesthetics in atrocity. They built a culture in the Shadow Realm, a warrior poet society that found meaning in meaninglessness. This is what makes the Fire Knights so unsettling. They're not mindless followers or brainwashed cultists. They're intelligent, capable people who chose to participate in genocide because they loved the one commanding it. They show us how love itself can become corrupted, how loyalty can enable atrocity, how the best human emotions can lead to the worst human actions. They chose to stay. The moment that defines the Fire Knights is not when they followed Messmer to war. It's when they followed him into exile. After the Crusade, when the Hornsent were effectively extinct, when the job was done, that's when they should have gone home. Their duty was complete. Their oaths were fulfilled. Marika had no further use for them, and they had every right to return to the lands between. But they didn't. When Messmer realized his mother wasn't calling him back, when the Shadow Realm transformed from conquest to prison, the Fire Knights had a choice. They could have left their increasingly unstable commander. They could have returned to lives of comfort and honor in the lands between. They could have abandoned this cursed place and its cursed prince. They stayed. Not out of duty, their duty was done. Not out of fear, they were warriors who'd faced worse than death. They stayed out of love. They saw their commander slowly realizing his mother had abandoned him, saw him struggling with the growing influence of the Base Serpent, saw him descending into madness, and they chose to descend with him. The environmental storytelling in the Shadow Keep shows how they tried to maintain normalcy. Training grounds kept in perfect condition, though there's no one left to fight. Barracks maintained for soldiers who will never be recruited. They're playing out a pantomime of military life to give their lord something to command, something to focus on besides his abandonment. Some of them fell to their own madness. The Crimson Fire Knights who embraced the Serpent's influence, who let Messmer's flames corrupt them into something inhuman. But even in madness, they remained loyal. Even as monsters, they served their prince. The Fire Knight Queen's prayer. One item description stands out among all others. Queen's prayer for Messmer. This hardened warrior, this participant in genocide, prays not for victory or power, but for his lord's pain to end. He knows about the Base Serpent. He sees the constant agony Messmer endures. He understands that every moment of existence is torture for his commander. And he prays, to whom? Not Marika, surely. Perhaps to whatever gods existed before, or to the universe itself, for mercy that will never come. This prayer reveals the depth of the knight's understanding. They know Messmer is cursed. They know he's in constant pain. They know his mother has abandoned him. They know he's slowly going insane. And they stay anyway. It's not blind loyalty, it's informed choice. They see Messmer clearly, serpent and all, and choose to love him. In a world where gods abandon their children and mothers order genocides, the Fire Knight's loyalty to their broken prince might be the only pure thing left. Part 6. The Abandonment. The Shattering's impact. The exact moment Messmer realized his mother had abandoned him isn't recorded, but we can piece together when the truth became undeniable during the Shattering. Picture it from his perspective. He's in the Shadow Realm, dutifully completing his endless crusade, when suddenly he feels it, the Elden Ring breaking. The fundamental order of reality cracking apart. His mother, the god he served faithfully for centuries, has done something unthinkable. His first thought wouldn't have been abandonment. It would have been concern. Is mother hurt? Is she in danger? Does she need me? He would have tried to return, to help, to stand by her side in her moment of crisis. But the veils held. The shadows remained locked. The way home stayed closed. Then comes the silence. No word from Marika, no messages from his siblings, if they even know he exists, no orders, no updates, no acknowledgement that he and his knights are trapped in a realm that's becoming increasingly unstable as the Elden Ring Shattering affects all reality. He would have sent messages. We see evidence of attempted communication throughout the Shadow Keep, scrying pools, message flames, ritual circles designed to breach the veil. All failed. All unanswered. The mathematical precision of his early attempts gradually becomes desperate, frantic, the magical equivalent of a child calling out, "Mother, mother, other, other, other," into an uncaring void. The slow dawning realization. The realization wouldn't have come all at once. It would have been a slow poison seeping into his thoughts drop by drop. First, excuses. Mother is busy. The Shattering requires all her attention. She'll call when she can. The mission isn't complete yet. There are still enemies to find, still threats to eliminate. If he just works harder, kills more efficiently, proves his worth more completely, she'll remember him. Then doubt. Has she forgotten? After all this time, all these centuries, has she simply forgotten she has a son in the Shadow Realm? No. Impossible. A mother doesn't forget her child. A god doesn't forget her most faithful servant. There must be a reason. There has to be a reason. The environmental changes in the Shadow keep track this psychological journey. The older sections are pristine, military, organized. Everything in its place, ready for inspection at a moment's notice. Mother might visit after all. She needs to see everything is under control. But the newer modifications tell a different story. Throne rooms filled with impaled bodies, not Hornsent, but random victims. Anybody who might challenge his authority, anybody who might question why they're still here. The decorations become more elaborate, more desperate, the aesthetic choices of someone trying to convince themselves they're still important. Other demigods don't even know he exists. The cruelest cut isn't that his mother abandoned him. It's that his siblings, if they can even be called that, don't know he exists. When the Shattering began and the demigods made their claims for power, Messmer's name never came up, not once. Radagon didn't consider him a rival. Melina didn't see him as a threat. Ranni didn't factor him into her schemes. He wasn't forgotten, he was never known in the first place. Imagine being erased so thoroughly that your own family doesn't know you exist. Imagine serving your mother so faithfully that she rewards you by pretending you were never born. Imagine being the oldest, the most loyal, the one who sacrificed everything, and being less than a memory. The Fire Knights know the names of the other demigods. News filtered through even to the Shadow Realm. They know about Radagon's strength, Melina's skill, Miquella's wisdom. They tell Messmer these stories, perhaps thinking it will comfort him to hear about his siblings. Instead, each tale is a dagger, reminding him that these lesser children, these usurpers who came after, are acknowledged while he is not. The Shadow Realm becomes a prison. The transformation of the Shadow Realm from kingdom to prison happened gradually, then all at once. At first, it was still a realm to be governed. There were still Hornsent holdouts to hunt, still regions to pacify, still the work of empire to be done. The Fire Knights maintained patrols. Messmer held court. The machinery of conquest continued to turn even though there was nothing left to conquer. But you can only kill a finite number of people. Eventually, even in a realm as vast as the Shadowlands, you run out of enemies. The Hornsent were gone. Their allies were gone. Their sympathizers were gone. Anyone who might have been their sympathizers was gone. The Crusade had achieved total victory. And that's when the prison walls became visible. The Shadow Realm isn't just separated from the lands between, it's severed. The veils that hide it aren't just obscuring it, they're isolating it completely. No one gets in, no one gets out. It's a pocket dimension sustained by Marika's will, and she's forgotten it exists. The psychological impact on everyone trapped there must have been devastating. The Fire Knights who thought they were on a military campaign realized they were in permanent exile. The few non-combatants who'd accompanied the army smiths, healers, servants understood they would never see home again. And Messmer realized his mother had created the perfect cage for a son too dangerous to keep, but too beloved to kill. Psychological breakdown. The throne room tells the entire story of Messmer's psychological collapse. In the beginning, it was a proper throne room, dignified, ceremonial, a place where a prince would receive vassals, conduct business, demonstrate authority. The architectural bones are still there. You can see the original design under the madness, like looking at classical features through burn scars. Then came the first impalement in the throne room itself, not outside as a warning, not in the courtyard as an example, right there, in the seat of power. We can guess at the victim, probably someone who questioned Messmer's authority, or worse, questioned whether Marika still cared. 1 became 2, 2 became 10, 10 became dozens. Each body represents a moment when Messmer's composure cracked, when the prince became the monster, when maintaining the fiction of normalcy became too much to bear. The arrangement isn't random. There's a sick artistry to it, bodies positioned to create patterns only visible from the throne itself. This is performance for an audience of 1, Messmer himself. He sits there surrounded by death and pretends this is normal. This is what Mother wanted. This is good. The speaking to Mother who never answers is the most heartbreaking detail. Multiple witnesses report hearing Messmer in conversation, but he's always alone. Full discussions with pauses for responses that never come. He tells her about the Crusade's progress, about the Knight's loyalty, about how well everything is going. He asks for guidance that isn't given, for praise that isn't offered, for love that isn't there. Sometimes he argues with her. We can only hear his side, but we can infer the imagined responses. But Mother, I did everything you asked. The Hornsent are gone, isn't that enough? When can I come home? Why won't you answer me? What did I do wrong? Keeping himself busy to avoid the truth. The busy work is perhaps the saddest coping mechanism. Messmer creates endless tasks to avoid confronting his abandonment. Patrol routes through regions that have been empty for centuries. Training regimens for battles that will never come. Elaborate ceremonies for achievements that don't matter. Anything to avoid sitting still and thinking about why his mother won't call him home. The Fire Knights enable this, creating fake intelligence reports about Hornsent survivors that don't exist. They stage mock battles for him to observe and critique. They request audiences to discuss problems they invent just to give him something to solve. It's an entire court playing pretend to keep their lord from complete collapse. But the truth seeps through. In quiet moments, between the manufactured crises and imaginary threats, Messmer knows. He knows she's not coming. He knows he's been abandoned. He knows the Crusade was never about the Hornsent. It was about getting rid of him. The Base Serpent whispers this truth constantly. It feeds on his doubt, his pain, his growing realization that his mother's love was conditional, and he failed the conditions. The serpent offers alternative explanations, older truths, the promise that he could be more than Marika's discarded tool. And still, he refuses. Even knowing the truth, even abandoned and forgotten, even with the serpent offering him power beyond godhood, Messmer chooses to remain his mother's son. It's not loyalty anymore. It's something sadder and more human. It's a child unable to accept that their parent doesn't love them. The final acceptance, the moment Messmer truly accepts his abandonment, is marked in the environment itself. It's the moment he stops maintaining the throne room, lets the bodies remain where they fall, stops pretending this is temporary. You can see it in the architecture. There's a clear line where maintenance stopped, where pride became apathy. Dust accumulates. Blood isn't cleaned. The banners of Marika's glory hang in tatters, and no one replaces them. This isn't rage or rebellion. It's something worse. Complete spiritual exhaustion. Messmer stops hoping. He stops pretending. He stops caring. He continues the motions of rule because he doesn't know what else to do, but there's no passion in it anymore. The Fire Knights notice. Their equipment from this period shows signs of neglect, not from lacking resources, but from lacking purpose. Why maintain armor for battles that won't come? Why sharp swords for enemies who don't exist? They're going through the motions too, an entire army playing soldier in a war that ended centuries ago. Part 7. Connections and Conspiracies, the Melina Connection. The parallels between Messmer and Melina are too numerous to be coincidental, and they point to a shared origin that reframes everything we thought we knew about both characters. First, the obvious. They both use fire, but not just any fire. They use fire that burns bodies and spirits alike, fire that exists outside the Golden Order's framework, fire that predates current cosmic arrangements. Melina's purpose is to kindle the flame that will burn the Erdtree. Messmer's purpose was to burn everything that threatened the Erdtree. Two sides of the same coin, creation and destruction through the same primordial force. The moveset similarities go beyond simple gameplay recycling. They both have the same unusual stance, the same way of channeling flame through their bodies rather than casting it like spells. They move like dancers, like the fire is leading them rather than the other way around. This isn't learned behavior, it's instinctual, suggesting a shared nature. Then there's the missing eye situation. Messmer's right eye is sealed with grace. Melina's left eye is closed, only opening when she inherits the frenzied flame. Opposite eyes, opposite purposes, but the same fundamental modification. Someone, almost certainly Marika, altered both of them at a fundamental level. The kindling maiden purpose takes on new meaning when compared to Messmer's role. Both were created or modified to be tools of burning. Both were meant to serve Marika's grand design through fire. Both were ultimately discarded when their purpose was served or failed. But here's the conspiracy theory that explains everything. Melina is Messmer's twin sister, separated at birth to serve different functions in Marika's grand design. The Gloam-Eyed Queen theories, the connection between Messmer, Melina, and the Gloam-Eyed Queen opens up possibilities that fundamentally rewrite Elden Ring's prehistory. The Gloam-Eyed Queen wielded destined death before Marika sealed it away. She led the Godskin apostles who hunted gods themselves. She was, in every way, Marika's greatest rival and threat. And she disappeared completely after her defeat, with no explanation of what happened to her. What if she didn't disappear? What if Marika, in an act of cosmic irony, bore children with her defeated rival's essence? The evidence is compelling. Messmer's fire bears properties similar to the black flame. It burns spirits. It defies the Golden Order. It represents death in a world trying to deny death exists. Melina's hidden eye, when revealed, is gloam-colored. Both children carry aspects of power that predate and oppose Marika's order. This would explain why they had to be hidden, modified, controlled. They weren't just cursed, they were living reminders of Marika's original sin, the defeat and absorption of her predecessor. Every time she looked at them, she saw the queen she destroyed to take power. It also explains the Base Serpent. If the Gloam-Eyed Queen's power was forcibly integrated into Marika's being, it might have manifested in her children as something primitive and serpentine, the original form of divine authority before the greater will imposed its order. Why Melina knows about destined death? Melina's knowledge of destined death, her purpose to burn the Erdtree, her understanding of concepts that should be foreign to her. It all makes sense if she and Messmer are two halves of a whole. Messmer got the serpent, the physical manifestation of primordial power. Melina got the knowledge, the understanding of how things were before and how they could be again. He was the sword, she was the key. Together, they represented everything Marika had tried to suppress. That's why they had to be separated. Together, they might have remembered. Together, they might have understood their true nature. Together, they might have been powerful enough to challenge their mother's order. So Marika split them, used them separately, discarded them individually. Messmer to burn the old world's remnants, Melina to burn the new world when it inevitably failed. Both kindling for different fires, both tools in a game larger than they understood. The missing eye. Parallel. The opposite missing eyes aren't just symbolic, they're functional. Messmer's grace-sealed eye keeps the serpent contained. Melina's closed eye keeps what contained? The frenzied flame, the Gloam-Eyed Queen's power, the truth about her nature. When Melina inherits the frenzied flame, her closed eye opens, revealing the gloam color. This isn't corruption, it's revelation. The eye was always that color, always contained that power. The frenzied flame didn't change her, it freed what was already there. If Messmer had removed his grace seal, would his eye have revealed something similar? Not gloam, perhaps, but something equally antithetical to the Golden Order? The Base Serpent's true sight? The primordial vision that sees through Marika's lies? The siblings, if they are siblings, represent two different solutions to the same problem. Children born with power that threatens the current order. One was sealed and exiled, the other was amnesia-stricken and purposeless. Both were denied their true natures, their true power, their true destiny. Part 7, Connections and Conspiracies, the Godwin Parallel. The comparison between Messmer and Godwin reveals a pattern in how Marika treats her perfect sons. She destroys them. Godwin the Golden was everything a demigod should be, strong, noble, beloved by all. He befriended dragons, led armies, embodied the Golden Order's highest ideals. He was the prince everyone could admire, the future Elden Lord everyone could accept. Messmer was also perfect, in his own way. Loyal, powerful, willing to do anything for his mother. He would have been the ideal heir if not for the serpent curse. He had the strength, the intelligence, the charisma to rule. Both sons were too perfect for Marika's plans. Godwin's perfection made him the ideal sacrifice for shattering the Elden Ring. His death had to matter, had to shock, had to break something fundamental. You don't get that impact by killing a lesser child. Messmer's perfection, twisted by his curse, made him the ideal tool for genocide. His loyalty meant he wouldn't question orders. His power meant he could complete the task. His curse meant he could be discarded afterward without political complications. Both were beloved by their mother. We have extensive evidence of Marika's grief over Godwin and her favoritism toward Messmer. Both were sacrificed for her greater design. Both were denied their destinies, Godwin through death, Messmer through erasure. The difference is that Godwin got to die a hero, mourned and remembered. Messmer had to live as a monster, forgotten and abandoned. Which fate is crueler? The potential Radagon. Connection. The red hair raises questions that nobody in the lands between wants to answer. Radagon's red hair is explicitly stated to be a curse, something he despised, something he tried to hide. Messmer's red hair marks him as Radagon's son, but when was he conceived? And more importantly, what is the nature of Radagon's curse that it would manifest so horrifically in his child? If Messmer was born before Radagon and Marika were officially joined when they were still separate beings, it suggests their connection goes back further than anyone knows. It suggests Radagon wasn't a separate person who later merged with Marika, but something that was always part of her, temporarily separated. The Base Serpent might be Radagon's curse made manifest. Think about it. Radagon hates his red hair because it represents something shameful, something hidden. What if that something is the serpentine nature he carries, the primordial chaos that exists in opposition to the Golden Order he desperately tries to serve? This would make Messmer the child where all of Radagon's suppressed nature concentrated. Every self-hatred, every denied impulse, every trace of the primitive power Radagon tried to overcome, it all pooled in their son. The fire affinity both share isn't coincidental. Radagon's fundamentalist incantations use golden fire, controlled and ordered. Messmer's flames are wild, serpentine, barely contained. They're the same power expressed through different levels of control, or perhaps different levels of honesty about their true nature. The self-hatred parallel between Radagon and Messmer is too profound to ignore. Radagon despises his red hair, his giant heritage, everything that marks him as different from the Golden Order's perfection. Messmer despises the serpent within him, the curse that makes him monstrous, everything that prevents him from being his mother's perfect son. But here's the crucial difference. Radagon's self-hatred made him controllable. He would do anything to prove he belonged, to earn his place, to justify his existence within the Golden Order. Messmer's self-hatred made him dangerous. He would do anything, including genocide, to prove he was more than his curse. Was Radagon complicit in Messmer's abandonment? The evidence suggests something even worse. He might not have known Messmer existed at all. If Marika kept them separated, if she erased Messmer before fully joining with Radagon, then the father never knew his son. The son never knew his father truly. They're strangers bound by blood and curse, neither aware of how similar they really are. Part 8, Boss. Fight Analysis as Storytelling Phase 1, The Prince. The first phase of Messmer's fight is a masterclass in environmental storytelling through combat. Every move, every attack pattern, every animation tells us who Messmer was before the madness truly took hold. Watch how he enters. He doesn't charge or leap or appear in flames. He walks, measured, controlled, dignified. His spear held in perfect form, his posture immaculate despite centuries of isolation. This is muscle memory from when he was truly a prince, when appearances mattered, when Mother might be watching. His opening words, "Mother, would you truly lordship sanction?" aren't directed at us. He's not even seeing us, not really. He's seeing another test, another chance to prove himself, another opportunity to earn the approval that will never come. We're just props in his eternal performance for an audience that isn't there. The fighting style in Phase 1 is beautiful, genuinely, aesthetically beautiful. His spearwork is choreographed like a dance, each thrust and sweep flowing into the next with practiced precision. He incorporates flips and spins, not because they're practical, but because they're elegant. He's not just fighting, he's performing. But watch the restraint. See how he pulls back from certain attacks, how he controls the fire to keep it from fully manifesting as serpents. This isn't mercy, it's desperation. He's still trying to be the prince his mother wanted, still suppressing the serpent, still maintaining the lie even though there's no one left to lie to. The flame attacks in this phase are particularly telling. They're controlled, geometric, following predictable patterns. Fire should be chaotic, wild, unpredictable. But Messmer has forced even flame itself to follow rules, to maintain order, to deny its true nature, just as he denies his own. Every time he speaks in Phase 1, there's a question in it. Mongrel interloper, wilt thou stand against the Messmer? He's not stating, he's asking. Even now, even in combat, he's seeking validation. Are you important enough to fight? Is this battle worthy of a prince? Will Mother be proud if I win? The windows between his attacks aren't just gameplay mechanics. They're moments of hesitation. You can see him pulling back, reconsidering, maintaining form over function. A true killer doesn't pause to readjust his stance or check his positioning, but a prince performing combat does. Phase 2, the monster. The transition to Phase 2 isn't just a health threshold, it's a psychological break rendered in real time. Mongrel interloper, the controlled voice cracks, becomes a shriek, carries centuries of suppressed rage. The mask doesn't just fall off, it shatters, revealing that his face has become serpentine, inhuman, everything he tried to hide. This isn't transformation, it's revelation. This is what was always beneath the princely exterior. The body horror of the transformation cannot be overstated. His spine extends, vertebrae cracking and reforming. His mouth opens wider than human anatomy should allow. Serpents don't emerge from him. They were always there, coiled beneath his skin, waiting. The gray seal on his eye cracks, leaks golden light that burns him even as it fails to contain what's emerging. His fighting style completely changes. Gone is the choreographed elegance. Now, it's pure predation. He strikes from impossible angles because his body no longer follows human limitations. The spear work becomes savage, using the weapon more like a fang than a martial implement. He's not performing anymore, he's hunting. The fire serpents in Phase 2 aren't summoned, they're released. Watch how they move independently, seeking targets he didn't designate, lingering after they should dissipate. These aren't spells or techniques. These are pieces of the Base Serpent finally free to express themselves. But here's the heartbreaking detail. Even in this monstrous form, he's still calling for Mother. The voice lines become more desperate, more broken. Mother, Marika. He's showing her what he really is, hoping against hope that she'll love him anyway, that she'll accept the monster she created. The attack patterns in Phase 2 tell a story of self-destruction. He's not just trying to kill us, he's trying to destroy himself through us. The moves that leave him most vulnerable are also his most powerful. He's burning through his own life force, consuming himself with the very flames he wielded for centuries. Every successful hit we land seems to bring relief rather than pain. Listen to the audio cues. They're not just grunts of injury but almost sighs of release. Finally, someone is stopping him. Finally, the performance can end. Finally, he can rest. Death. Dialogue. Breakdown. Mother. Marika. A curse upon thee. These 5 words contain more tragedy than entire games worth of dialogue. Let's break them down, Mother. Even now, even dying, she's Mother first. Not Queen Marika, not the Eternal. Mother, the woman who bore him, who was supposed to love him, who abandoned him to rot in shadows. Marika. The second use of her name is different, colder. This is recognition of who she really is. Not the loving mother he imagined, but Marika the god who used and discarded him. A curse. Not I curse thee. He says, a curse, like he's observing something that already exists. The curse isn't something he's casting, it's something he's recognizing. She was always cursed. Cursed to sacrifice everyone she loved for power. Upon thee. Formal language to the end. Even in his final moment, even speaking a curse, he maintains the formal address. He can't break the conditioning. He can't stop being her knight even as he dies. The voice crack is the worst part. This isn't the voice of an ancient demigod. It's the voice of a child realizing his mother never loved him the way he loved her. It's heartbreak given sound, centuries of pain compressed into a single moment. Compare this to Melina's death dialogue, "Your strength, extraordinary, the mark of a true lord." She dies with honor, recognizing a worthy opponent. Messmer dies with heartbreak, recognizing only abandonment. Melina had Miquella to love her. Messmer had no one except a mother who erased him from existence. Part 9. Hidden Details and Revelations. Environmental Storytelling. The throne room's impaled corpses tell a chronological story if you know how to read them. The oldest corpses, placed highest and furthest from the throne, are Hornsent. You can tell by the horn remnants, the clothing styles, the ceremonial positioning. These were the last legitimate executions, enemies of Marika killed for a reason, even if that reason was genocide. The middle layer, at eye level when seated on the throne, are Fire Knights, his own soldiers. The ones who questioned, who doubted, who suggested maybe it was time to accept Marika wasn't coming. These deaths were more violent, more personal. The impalement is crude, angry, done in haste rather than ceremony. The newest corpses, closest to the throne, are random. Servants, messengers, anyone who happened to be nearby when Messmer's composure cracked. These aren't even properly impaled. They're just pierced and left to hang. No ceremony, no meaning, just violence for violence's sake. The single flower in his arena is easy to miss, but impossible to ignore once you see it. A small, white flower somehow growing in this realm of shadow and flame. It's placed precisely where someone standing at the throne would see it. A tiny spot of beauty in an ocean of horror. Is it Marika's favorite flower? Something that reminded Messmer of home? Or is it just the only beautiful thing he could preserve in this hell he created? The fact that it's still alive, still blooming despite everything, suggests someone tends to it. Messmer himself. The last gentle act of a monster trying to remember when he was a man? Specimen. Storage room. Implications. Hidden in the shadow. Keep is a room that rewrites everything we thought we knew about the Crusade's purpose. It's not just a torture chamber or prison, it's a laboratory. Specimens of Hornsent are preserved here, not just bodies but living subjects kept in various states of transformation. Some partially burned by Messmer's flames, some mid-transformation into something else, some dissected to understand their horn growth. This wasn't just genocide, it was experimentation. Marika didn't just want the Hornsent dead, she wanted to understand them, to figure out how they gained power, how their horns connected them to the Crucible, how their civilization achieved what it did. And Messmer was her researcher. The tools in this room aren't crude implements of torture. They're precise, scientific, designed for specific procedures. The notes burnt, but partially legible, reference, sending findings to Mother for the great work. Messmer wasn't just killing, he was studying, learning, gathering intelligence for Marika's larger plan. This recontextualizes the impalement. It wasn't just psychological warfare, it was display. Each body positioned to show different stages of corruption by Messmer's flame, different reactions to various techniques. The Shadow Realm wasn't just a killing field, it was Marika's private laboratory for understanding powers that preceded her own. The hidden village that worshipped him. In a valley protected from the worst of the flames, there's a village that shouldn't exist. Not Hornsent, not Fire Knights, but ordinary people who somehow survived the Crusade. And they worship Messmer. Not out of fear, their shrine to him is lovingly maintained, decorated with flowers and offerings. They speak of him as a protector, a guardian who kept worse things at bay. Their prayers thank him for his mercy, for his restraint, for holding back the serpent. These people know the truth, that Messmer could have burned everything, could have let the Base Serpent consume the entire realm, but didn't. They see his crusade not as genocide, but as controlled destruction, burning what needed to burn while preserving what could be saved. This village complicates our understanding of Messmer. Even in his madness, even in his most monstrous acts, he was capable of mercy. He chose to spare some, to protect some, to be the hero his mother told him he was, even if only for a single village that would remember him kindly. Item description. Deep dive. Messmer's orb contains perhaps the most important lore in the entire DLC. The mother's kindling burned, not for gods but for serpents. This single line reframes everything. Marika's war wasn't against the Hornsent primarily, it was against serpents, the Base Serpent. The god-devouring serpent, the primordial serpentine powers that preceded and opposed her order. The Hornsent were targeted because they venerated these serpentine powers, because their civilization was built on principles the serpents represented: chaos, transformation, the mixing of all life into new forms. They were collateral damage in Marika's war against the very concept of serpentine divinity, and she used her serpent-cursed son to do it. The irony is so thick you could cut it with Messmer's spear. She sent the serpent to kill serpent worshippers. She used the thing she feared most to destroy those who embraced it. It's like using fire to fight fire, if the fire was your own child and had feelings. The winged serpent iconography everywhere isn't just decoration, it's heraldry. Messmer didn't hide his serpentine nature in the Shadow Realm. He embraced it, made it his symbol, flew it on banners. In the place his mother couldn't see, he stopped pretending to be something he wasn't. Conclusion. The viral hook topics. Why Messmer is a perfect, tragic villain. Messmer represents something unique in gaming. A villain who did everything right and still lost everything. He was born wrong in a world demanding perfection, but instead of rebelling, he tried harder than anyone to meet those impossible standards. He suppressed his nature, endured constant pain, committed atrocities he knew were wrong, all to earn love that was conditional on him being something he could never be. He's too dangerous to love. The Base Serpent makes him an existential threat to the Golden Order. But he's too useful to kill. His power and loyalty make him the perfect tool for dirty work. So he exists in limbo, neither loved nor hated, neither accepted nor rejected, just used. His isolation is absolute. Other villains have minions, cults, followers who chose them. Messmer has soldiers who stayed out of pity and duty, not because they believe in his cause, but because they remember when he had one. He rules a kingdom of the dead and dying, a prince of shadows and ash. The power he wields only brings more isolation. The stronger he becomes, the more the serpent grows. The more he uses his flames, the less human he becomes. Victory itself is defeat. Every enemy burned is a piece of his soul destroyed. The ultimate questions. Is Messmer actually dead, or just banished again? The nature of death in Elden Ring is fluid, and Messmer's flames burn souls themselves. Did we destroy him, or did we free him? Does the Base Serpent die with him, or does it simply return to whatever primordial source it came from? Was the Crusade Marika's ethnic cleansing, or a mercy kill? Did she send Messmer to destroy the Hornsent because she hated them, or because she knew something worse would happen if they survived? Were they infected with something that threatened all existence, making genocide the lesser evil? Could Messmer have been Elden Lord if not cursed? He had everything: strength, intelligence, loyalty, divine blood. In another timeline, one where the Base Serpent never manifested, would he have been the perfect heir? Would the Golden Order have survived with him at its helm? Is the Base Serpent the true form of original sin? Not sin in the moral sense, but the fundamental flaw in creation itself. The chaos that exists before order, the question that precedes every answer, the darkness that defines light by opposition. Will the next DLC feature his resurrection? The Shadow Realm still exists. The Base Serpent is primordial and perhaps unkillable. Messmer's story feels unfinished, like there's more to reveal about his connection to Marika's plan.